That's much better. Hi, John here, and today I'm interviewing Elizabeth, who is a ADHD uh, counselor and also a counselor. You can feel me. And tell me, Elizabeth, a little bit about your story.
Yeah, registered therapeutic counselor and
Thank you.
ADHD coach. And I
Thank
guess
you.
now I don't know what it's like anywhere else, but I'm in Canada, so we have to put all those other things in front of it, because if you just say counselor, the counselor's so broadly used now. They'll
Oh,
use
I
it
know, huh?
travel agent and call it a travel counselor.
That's true, huh?
I guess a hairdresser is a
A
well,
hair counselor?
yeah, a hair counselor, but I used to work in salons, and I heard so many women, they would unload everything. Yeah, there's a joke among hairdressers about that. So yeah, I am a registered therapeutic counselor and ADHD coach. And that is my primary focus is ADHD and ADHD. And that's come from a time of evolution.
Uh-huh.
I believe that this is something that God has chosen me for me right from the get-go. When I was really young, I had a neighbor across the alley from me. Oh, let me think. I remember, I guess from about the age of 5, I would play with him. He was my primary playmate. Not a lot of other kids would play with him. He got picked on severely so
Um,
much because he was in the spectrum. Back in the 60s, they didn't know what that was. I mean, in the 80s.
yeah.
Nobody knew what that was. There wasn't the varying levels understanding of all that. And if anyone had anything that was different, whether it would be a cognitive impairment, a visual impairment, a hearing impairment, they were institutionalized.
Mm,
So the rest of the world was so sheltered and just did not know how to respond to someone that was not like everyone else.
right, right.
And so I played with him all the time. He was my playmate. And I got accustomed to the different, I guess, quirky behaviors that someone in the spectrum can have. So it started off that way. As I got older, of course, as a teenager, babysitting, and it seemed the majority of the time I had kids that were either Down syndrome. I didn't have anyone that was hearing impaired. However, a lot of them that were in the spectrum or Down syndrome. And just the evolution just kept rolling from there. When I was in my early 20s, I had my son. And of course, being my first pregnancy, I didn't know. Well, I was thinking, well, the doctor knows what they're doing. And no, she didn't.
Oh,
And my son ended up being the last delivery that she ever had. And I think it was probably because she was afraid that she might get the pantsuit off of her.
oh.
So my son, he is AUDHD, which is autism with ADHD.
Mm,
He's 36 now, and he does require some supports, but really functioning in other areas. So I've had that firsthand experience with him as well as myself having ADHD. So that's been an experience. However, when I lived in BC for quite a few years, I started as an esthetician, went back to school, took some nursing, worked in the hospital and nursing for quite a while, and I worked in intermediate and extended care. Working in extended care, people have very specific needs.
mhm.
And I just always had a way of communicating and just clicking with the people. And I really quite enjoyed it. However, there was some circumstances that happened that took me away from BC and came back here to Alberta, where my family is and where I started off, and started life all over again. And
Mm,
then it evolved. That's where things started to evolve. So the first job that I had got was as a behavioral intervention therapist, teaching children in the higher range, like the less functional, more symptomatic of autism, teaching them how to communicate effectively. And of course, back then, there wasn't all the electronics. I mean, internet wasn't even a word that was even heard of.
No.
Yeah, back, and that was in the 90s. So we communicated with flashcards, with hand gestures and positive rewards and those sort of things. So I did that for quite a while. And again, I had a great connection with the kids. From there, that evolved to working with the school board for quite a few years as a special needs teaching assistant. And of course, I had all sorts of kids there. I did lots of one-on-one work, and things just continued to evolve from there over the years. And then there came a point where I had remarried, and it allowed me the privilege to start my own business at home as being an entrepreneur. Now, I always dabbled in little things like home shows and that sort of stuff. I quite enjoyed it. I started off as an esthetician because that was my original trait. And that just evolved into children's entertainment. And I was like, that's quite a shift.
Yeah.
That's a different story. And so I became a children's entertainer, face painter. And then even that grew from there. And I really I got so much joy working with the kids. And this just got to build and build and build for me for a business. One of the most common things that I would hear from parents would be, I am amazed my child sat for you. And I would just look at them, and to myself, I'm thinking, well, why wouldn't they? They're getting something that they want.
Right.
And they would say, no, you don't understand. Of course, I wouldn't say it like that. I said, well, it's amazing how good kids will sit for someone else, especially something that they want. And they'd say, no, you don't understand. My child has sensory issues. My child has autism. And I'd say, oh yeah, I knew that the minute they sat in my chair. I could tell. There's always cues, especially once it touched the face, because when it comes to sensory issues, the face is one of the most top sensory places for a lot of people. And so, of course, to touch a child with a wet, damp brush or sponge, it wasn't nice. I learned very quickly how to work with that and distract them from that sensory. My throat's getting dry here.
No, it's fine.
From that sensory issue, I implemented different sensory things. So I would start introducing vocal sensory. And lo and behold, I was able to paint the child really quickly. And of course, that just made their world. And that made the parents' world, because their child was happy and it wasn't always easy for them. So I had that experience. And then I came to a position in life where I needed to support myself and take care of my son. I became single. So I thought, I need to go back to school. And I thought, how am I going to do that? School was not easy for me. And it wasn't actually until I was in my grade 12 year, first time I went to an optometrist, he says, oh, you have dyslexia. There was no mention of the ADHD. I mean, the recognition of that didn't come until years later.
Right.
And what's fascinating is there are so many layers that come with ADHD, just so many layers. And just like an onion. I wish it was like a cake, but it's like an onion. So anyways, and that's another beauty, is I get off on a tangent. Where was I? I let it go, and then it comes back to me. So I thought, okay, going back to school, that was a bit of a challenge for me. And I thought, okay, well, I need to do it anyways. And I had always wanted to be a counselor. When I came back to Alberta, I actually went to university for a year to get my degree in psychology. And that was quite challenging, and life circumstances happened again. So I dropped out. But anyways, fast forward again, I went back to school and got a diploma in counseling. The program that I took was an equivalency program to a master's. And that was just an adventure in itself. So one of the things that ended up happening is all of my clients that I was getting were in the spectrum. They'd have ADHD or they'd have autism. And I knew how to work with that already because of my experiences and other training that I had. So I would incorporate, of course, that experience and knowledge along with my therapeutic experience and knowledge. And so then it got to be where people were knowing me for my experience in working with ADHD and autism. So I had actually shifted my practice because my practice was originally around trauma and abuse. And then I realized, wait a minute, when there are people that are in the spectrum, there's usually been some sort of trauma in their life.
Oh, yeah.
That it incorporates, and I realized I'm supposed to be working with ADHD and ADHD. So that's when I had shifted. So all of these elements came together. And part of being a part of a registering body, I always need to be upgrading my education, keeping up with my skills, finding out what's the newest techniques. And so, of course, then I'm always doing that with the ADHD. And it's just fascinating how it grows. And it's just grown from there. And I started a YouTube channel some time back, and then started just really getting into Facebook, Instagram, with doing posts and just sharing my knowledge with people. And they were just getting so much benefit from it. And the more I shared with them, it's like, okay, try this. I was in the Facebook communities and I'd say, oh, you're struggling with ABC. Well, have you tried this? Or why don't you give this a try? And they come back afterwards and said, that was amazing. I can't believe the world of difference that made. So that's kind of was my evolutionary road. And of course, with my son, he's 36 now, and he's on the lower scale as far as IQ goes, but yet his IQ is higher than 70, which means where I live, it's really difficult to get supportive services.
Oh, got you.
Yeah. And he wants to live on his own, yet he's very vulnerable, which is also another trait of people that have ADHD, is they tend to be really vulnerable. And, I don't want to use the word gullible, but they can be easily sucked in and manipulated, which is really heartbreaking for me. And it just gets me really angry. So, of course, I want to protect my son from this. So he's, he tried living on his own for a few years, and it was just kind of this disaster, that disaster, and people trying, I'm just glad I was there to help him out, because, different people would try to take advantage of him. And unfortunately, the first place where he was living, the guys actually watched out for him, but the landlady didn't like the fact that he had a difficulty with his organizational skills and with the cleanliness. So he had to leave that situation. So he lives with me, but quite independently, but still needs some of those supports. So actually, that's one of the things I'm in the battle of right now, is getting those supports for him. So that he can have his independent living. And there's so many other things that he can do on his own. And like a lot of people in the spectrum, they say, oh, I can't focus on anything. But yet then I get something else and I'm totally hyper-focused on it.
Right.
And it's like, yes, you can focus on something. It just has to be something that perks your interest. And then that in itself can have its own cycle of issues when it comes to the hyper focus, because then they become so engaged with what they're doing that it's like, oh gee, I got to go to the bathroom. Okay, I'm just going to finish this. And it's hard for them to go away from it, or they don't realize it's like, okay, I haven't eaten. It's already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I haven't had lunch yet. And it's like, okay, just finish this. I'll just finish this. And that's such a tagline is, well, I'll just finish this and then get to that. And the problem with that is I always compare ADHD to diabetes. I call it diabetes of the brain. Because a person that has diabetes, they need to watch their blood sugar levels. They need to eat on a regular basis. They need to stay hydrated, or they can have some major problems. Well, the neurodivergent is also like that. But because they're not tuned into their body, they don't realize that they're hungry. And they might say, set a reminder or an alarm or something, and goes off, say, okay, I need to eat. But it's like, I'm not hungry right now. It's like, oh, yeah, that's okay. Even though you're not hungry, you need to have something, have some protein, have something of high value, something that's not processed. Because if they don't, that's when the brain fog kicks in. That's when the confusion kicks in, because the blood sugars are going down, and the brain, already in a person with ADHD, the synapses, they're not firing like they would in a regular brain. There's less firing, it slows down, and there's not the dopamine being released, the norepinephrine. So there's less of it being released, and it's a chain reaction from there. So then, because of this, then there's all those layers that happen. It's like a domino effect. So they might become disoriented. The brain fog comes in. The frustration sits in, because I just got to finish this one task, and it might get frustrating. Instead of doing that, okay, leave it alone, walk away. It's just, I got to do it. I got to do it. I got to do it. And I've been guilty of that. I had to train myself not to. And then the meltdown comes, like the ADHD meltdown comes, or the autism meltdown. And again, because the dopamine isn't firing the way it's supposed to, those things happen easier. So that's why I always tell the people that I work with, whether you are hungry or not, you set your alarm to go off every couple hours during the day. You be sure you have a healthy breakfast, something high in protein, lower, like try to avoid the fruits, because it could cause, the blood sugar spike and then the crash. And then you get that tiredness in the afternoon. So it's like, go ahead and have fruit, but wait till maybe after 10:30 or 11, after you've been up for a few hours. But have that good healthy breakfast, something with protein in it, high fiber toast. So not processed like with white flour, but multi-grains, whole grains. Have the eggs, the protein, a steak. My dad used to always have steak and eggs, or fish and eggs. He was great for that. And he actually had schizophrenia. And I noticed when he had those high protein things, that's when he was at his best. So, start the days with that protein, and then set the alarm on your phone or something every 2 hours, whether you're hungry or not, you eat something, even if it's just like a quarter cup of nuts. And that helps with the brain fog, so that a person can focus, and then taking those little breaks. So it's interesting, the things that the ADHD person doesn't want to do, because these are the things they need to do, and they think, I won't be productive. It's like, it was like, okay, well, you need to take these breaks. You need to do these things for yourself, so that you can be productive in a healthy way. And there's a difference between being busy and accomplishing things. It can be a lot of empty things. It's different than actually being quality productive. So, when the person is taking care of themselves, doing the things that they need to do, it really helps to minimize the symptoms of the ADHD, and they can be healthier and happier. And so the circle goes and goes.
Now, do they write down like lists? Does that help with them? To-do list or
That does help with,
focus?
that does help with many people. And when it comes to the list, I always tell people, like, it's not a grocery list. Don't put 10, 20, 30 things on there, because in the mind, it's like, go, 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 go. I can do all these little things. And it's like, okay, would you rather do all these little things that, okay, so you organized all of your sticky notes,
Mm-hmm.
but how did that improve your quality of life?
Right, right.
Instead, have 3 quality things that are really going to help, and make those on your list. And then if you want a secondary of filler things, maybe 4 things after that. But having those 3 primary things is going to be more productive, and then have that feeling of accomplishment. And then when those things are completed, as each thing gets completed, they can check it off and realizing that was an important thing, so that they feel better about themselves. When they feel better, it's like, oh, suddenly they sit taller, they sit, their head goes up, their shoulders go back, a smile goes on their face, and dopamine's being released. So
Okay.
there's such a benefit to just having 3 things, 3 important things. So instead of like, okay, I have to organize the pens and the sticky notes and
Right.
that sort of thing. Okay, sure, you can do that. Or, all right, you're having challenges with Zoom. You could go on YouTube and look up, how do I deal with this one challenge on Zoom? And then put it into practice. Well, then lo and behold, that's a bigger skill that's actually transferable, just because of how everything is now, that learn some more electronics, you become more capable working on the computer, and it just carries over into other things.
I saw something, there was an article or something, person mentioned about confidence, that the more confident they get, the less scattered kind of, like when the kids like bouncing all around like in school and the teachers telling them just sit down and everything else, it's kind of because they don't really understand and they're not feel comfortable in what they're doing, part of it. So it creates anxiety, which creates them to be all scattered all over the place, versus trying to give them confidence and work with them in the subject.
Definitely. And there's even having little breaks and that's a great example. Adults are like that too. It's something that's not grown out of. However, it shows up different in us. So I don't know if you've noticed, when I'm talking with my hands. My hands are constantly moving. Or some people, they'll be fiddling with a pen or a pencil, or clicking it, or fiddling with some paper. There we go. That's a form of stimming. And so it helps to keep the focus. That sensory need for stimming is being there to help the focus. So for this person, for the child in school that is like, sit down, are you kidding me? So I would sometimes have kids that's like, are you kidding me? No, I can't sit down. It's like, okay, that's great. You need to burn off some energy. Let's go to the gym. Touch 4 walls, or jump on a rebounder, something that's stimulating, or having numbers on the walls randomly. So, all right, go find the 6 and touch it as fast as you can, and run to the one wall and touch 6, and then say, okay, where's 13? And it's another wall somewhere else. They're running back and forth. It's their mind is getting some focus to focus on something. It's stimulating them, plus they're burning off the energy. So we do that a little bit, go back to the classroom, and then they'd be able to focus on what they're doing for a bit. However, I would say, like, you don't have to sit down. If you want to stand, by all means, or if you want to be kneeling on your seat, or one knee on the seat and standing, and you're able to work, go for it. Because then they're happy. They're doing it in a posture that they can do it. And there might even be sensory issues around sitting. They might not be able to sit physically, the sensation of how their clothes touch them could be really uncomfortable and triggering, and some sensory issues for people. A certain type of touch can actually hurt. So yeah, and you know, these are all things that a lot of people might not be aware of, or you might say, you know what, I don't like a certain type of sweater. I don't know why, I can't put a finger on it. You know, I was like that with Angora. I remember when Angora was, everyone had
Yeah.
sweaters.
Right.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It actually physically hurt me. A soft, I could touch it with my hands, but to wear it, it hurt me.
Right.
It felt like, it almost felt like fiberglass dusting across.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, these are little ways, little compensations of finding, okay, there's a task I need to do. Let's find a way to make it work. So yeah, so that high energy thing, and just think, okay, let's focus on this for 10 minutes. And then, you know, some people like to use a reward system, some don't. However, what you call a reward might not necessarily be a reward, but a necessity in order to go forward. So for example, let's say that child, it's like, okay, let's do 10 minutes of work. Here's a digital timer. You can even watch it go down, you know, in the timing if you need to. When it's done, you've got your choice of, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 different activities that you can do for a few minutes. So it might be run up and down the stairs. It might be go outside for a moment and blow bubbles. Anything like that. That was a huge one that I used to use with my kids, the blowing the bubbles.
Blowing the bubbles.
Yeah, they love that. And actually, as a children's entertainer, I actually did bubble shows. It was fascinating.
Oh, okay.
Everyone loves bubbles.
Oh, yeah. That's always fun, bubbles.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah,
the real big ones.
yeah. Oh, I can put a person in a bubble. I put people
Oh,
in a bubble.
really?
Yeah, my only limitation, like I'd have guys that are like 6'6". My only limitation was what was how wide were they and how big was my hoop?
Oh,
Because
okay.
once the bubble touches their clothing, then but yes, that's a really fun things. Off on another tangent. But
Did music help too? Did you find that helps? Like
yes,
distraction for
yes.
music?
Yes, some and that's another thing too. Some people they can use that as a reward, or with some people it helps them to focus certain types of music, whether it's just really soft or high beat. And then you've got some people that's just like, no, I need dead silence. So I need to put in earplugs or headphones in order to focus on this one thing. So it can be one way or the other when it comes to sound sensory.
Yeah, that's interesting. I always noticed that I would turn on music like if I was doing like homework or something. And it kind of gave me a distraction so I could focus better. I don't know.
Yeah. A lot of people have that. And whereas I would be the person that I was on the other end where no, I want silence. I want no distractions. I used to have well, this used to be my office. It's in my house. So I use this now as a secondary office. And cats have me. So I would, I say that because I chose 2 cats and the rest just came. So they like a lot of attention. So I actually had when I was still married, my husband had built a man den out in the garage, because I had a massive garage, and that was going to be my office. So it ended up being, so I ended up moving out my office out to my garage because otherwise, like I would be at home by myself. But if the cats were done napping, it's like meow, meow. and then I realized they're not saying meow, they're saying me now, me now.
Yeah, me now. Yeah, cats are like that.
Yeah. Like, mommy, you're stressed. I want to calm you down. Yeah, so yeah, for me, I need to minimize distractions. But then that in itself too is another another cycle of things, another layer. It's like, well, what type of, does that help you focus or does it distract? If it helps you focus, great. And it's just, a matter of playing with it to find out what works for a person, and they'll know by what brings a smile to their face, what brings them joy, and helps them to focus on a task and get a task accomplished.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes that's hard to stay focused and stay on task.
It can be. Yeah, definitely. It can be. And, that's why there's a lot of entrepreneurs are in the spectrum, and they do really well because they're doing what they like doing. However, they come up with the other obstacles as they might not know, well, how do I handle the business aspect of it? And that was a big thing that we had in the entertainment community, because it really is a small community. We'd have people that were really good at their art, their skill, the performer, but they weren't good at the administration side of it. Or they're really good at the administration side, but they weren't as good at whatever their skill was of their art, their talent. So it was difficult to find both. And somehow, God only knows, I was able to do both.
Oh, nice.
I managed to do both. I was really good at the administrative side, working with the people, and I was really good at the performing side. And yeah, I've always been that way, as far as the performing goes, always been a very theatrical person, and not just not as in drama, as an emotional drama,
right.
Just theatrical. I enjoyed drama in school. I enjoyed being in plays. I enjoyed singing, that sort of thing. So yeah, so I was very blessed that way. And so yeah, back to entrepreneurs. If you look at a lot of people, you might be quite surprised to find out that they're in the spectrum. So John Lennon, he had ADHD.
Oh, okay.
Christie, she had ADHD. It's right there. Thomas Edison, he had ADHD.
Oh, really?
Can you imagine the hyper focus he had?
Yeah.
How many filaments do I need to make this light?
Right.
Graham Alexander Bell is another one.
Tesla, maybe?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Because he was.
It wouldn't surprise me. A lot of actors, they're also in the spectrum. Tatum Channing, that's also the list goes on. I want to say Justin Timberlake, but I could be wrong. But yeah, a lot of vocal artists, they have ADHD, and it's because of the ADHD, and they can find their hyperfocus, and that's usually their passion. So for someone that wants to be independently employed, that's the perfect thing. It can be really challenging for people that have ADHD or ADHD to keep jobs, just because of the tasks required of them, or the social interaction skills is challenging for them. So if they're able to be an entrepreneur, then they can find what they really enjoy doing, but they can really flourish. So that's why you might find a lot of people in the performing arts that are in the spectrum.
Now, how can you use that hyper focus to like turn it on or off? Is there ways to do that, to like little tricks to?
Well, turning on the hyper focus is usually not an issue, but turning it off is a lot of discipline. And sometimes what I recommend people to do is have accountability buddies. That can also work if you have a hard time doing a skill or getting motivated. It's like going to the gym. It's
Yeah.
so much easier to go to the gym when you have a workout buddy, because then you're accountable to someone. So stopping the hyper focus, that's where I always tell people, you need to use your timers and you stick to them. It's like, okay, so I've got a task I'm going to do. Let's say, well, myself, I spend a lot of time on the computer. I will set my timer, and for X number of minutes, it might be 45 minutes, it might be an hour, it might be 50 minutes. But then when that timer goes off, it's just, I really want to finish the one thing. However, I don't. And then I do something else. Like it's always good to get the eyes away from the computer. So, I might just stare off into the distance outside and look outside. I might go for a really quick walk around the block just to re-energize and recirculate, everything going on in the brain and just refresh it. One that I really like to do a lot is just dance. I'll put on, find a song on my playlist. I'll put it on. I'll just dance. It might be just 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And then I go back to my task. Or it might be the snack time, or it might be meal time. So just being really disciplined at using that timer. And I have one friend that's a performing artist, and he would make an amazing radio host or talk show host, just because he has a deep, commanding voice. Mm-hmm. Really soothing, really easy to listen to. He sings beautifully, and he's an example of someone that has the art really well, mm-hmm. but can't do the administrative. Otherwise, he probably would have been, or might possibly still, if he wanted to really by himself, be like an opera singer or something to that effect. Get himself a coach and have someone say, okay. But he's a caricaturist, and he is the fastest caricaturist. I think he calls himself the fastest caricaturist in North America. Really? He's set up in one of our major malls and just whips people through, just does amazing work. And so he uses that as his superpower. So because he only has someone sitting in front of him for a couple minutes, he's hyper focused. It doesn't matter what's going on around him. He's just like looking at the person, just drawing, and he's got this little camera down watching so that people can watch what's going mm-hmm. on. He just hyper focuses on everything that he's doing. And then once it's done, then it's like, okay, that's his refresh break. But when he's not doing that, when he's not working, he needs reminders all the time. So he has another friend that's almost like a mother. And she will phone him almost hourly and say, Robert, did you eat? Okay, Robert, you need to do this. Robert, you've got an appointment. So he needs those reminders. Okay. Yeah, so he thrives really well. So that is another thing that a person can do, is have that accountability person. It's like, okay, can you send me a text message and remind me at this time? If your phone is not enough, just say, okay, your alarm went off. Did you do this? You need to do this. Okay, remember, you've got this appointment. And taking advantage of the electronics with appointment reminders, in any way you can do an appointment reminder, can be something that people in the spectrum can forget, is appointments. So you can write it down on the calendar. You can have it in a appointment book. I mean, I still do the paper appointment book along with the electronics, because that way I know if one of them crashes, I've got the other. Right. Synchronizing the electronic calendars with all of your devices, or I use a booking system online for my clients, and that in itself will also send me reminders. So there's just different ways, but those reminders and being disciplined to paying attention to the reminders, that is the best way to break the hyper focus, take that break that is actually needed to avoid the frustration, the meltdown, and then you can go back to your task. So that, yeah, that's a good way to break the hyperfocus.
So do you find that they're more critical of themselves? Like they think they should get things done faster and it takes longer, and so they get frustrated, or?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, there's yeah, that's one of the layers, one of the many layers. Well, two of them is highly sensitive person. And so you might hear the term HSP used to describe it. And that can be sensitive emotionally, physically, sensory wise. They might take things really personally. And another thing that also can come with that is RSD, which is the rejection sensitive dysmorphia, where people will take things seriously, really seriously. And like as in deep rejection, such as they sent a text message to someone and that person didn't respond within 10, 15 minutes or an hour later, they will take it so severely personally and create a story in their mind as to what it is. So yes, that being the hard on themselves and having higher expectations can be very dominant there, especially when growing up, unless they are in a community that really understands the spectrum, then they're likely been exposed to people even within their own family that say, quit daydreaming, get on with things. Or, you know what, you do so much better if you just focus, you know, or just apply yourself. Or, you know, I know that you're very bright and brilliant, you can do this. Or you quit losing things, stay organized, use that hook there at the door to hang your keys on, or you know, you clutter all over the place. People they hear this from a very young age.
Right.
And probably even before they even know that they might have ADHD, or before their parents know. So they're getting the negative messages, the negative reinforcements. And it's like poking a hole in a balloon, or let's say poking a hole in a porous sponge, like a sponge. Well, let's say just something soft, poking a hole in it, putting a needle in it. And every time they hear it, it's like one more. And there's no longer that porous sponge there. It's a porcupine on steroids.
Right.
Every time they hear that message, what they're hearing is, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not organized enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not clean enough. I'm not organized enough. And already there's 8 not enoughs.
Right.
Where they're thinking, I'm not enough. So there again, that interferes already right there with that dopamine being released. And then what's being released is cortisol. And the more cortisol that's released, that can trigger the deeper emotional states of feeling rejection, feeling depressed, and can lead into depressive states or actual clinical depression. So yes, a person in the spectrum can be really sensitive to even their own expectations of themselves, thinking they should accomplish more, they should be able to do things faster, when in reality, what I like to compare to is say, look, this is the reality that you have. You were born with this. You didn't choose it. It's the way you were created. So it's like someone that is a quadriplegic or paraplegic. If they're in a wheelchair, nobody is going to go up to them and say, do you know what? You're just not applying yourself.
Right.
Get out of that chair. Come on, just practice. Just apply yourself and just do it. Okay. Just do it. Get up out of the chair and walk.
Right.
You can't, because there's nerve damage there.
Right.
And that's the same thing with someone with ADHD or ADHD, is there's something neurologically different there. it's wired different there. So they're not able to. However, they can train themselves
Yeah.
to have a more higher functioning life. And that's what I do. I work with people. Help them move through their traumas and healing. And I also help them find the coping skills and find the tools for doing better with their symptoms, so they're less symptomatic, or when symptoms come up, they know how to regulate themselves. They know how to do a containment exercise. They know how to take care of themselves so that they're not getting the symptoms.
Now,
Or I can't say not getting the symptoms. The symptoms are lesser and they're able to do more and to be more productive. And yeah, so after hearing years of that stuff, the person can be really hard on themselves and have unrealistic expectations. And that's one of the things I like to work with in them, is turning that thought process around, so that it's like, instead of going from, I wish I could do this better.
right.
I can't do this. I can't do this. To, that's a challenging task. It's something that I can learn. And what I do know how to do really well is this. I just haven't learned that yet. It's just a matter of learning it. So, taking that and turning it around.
So awareness is really key for them to be self-aware of what's going on and use.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
And so if someone was to work with you, what kind of transformations and then what kind of skills or, tools would you give them to
It all depends on if we're working in a group setting or if we're working on one-on-one. Quite often, I like to use a lot of somatic therapy. And so somatic therapy is working with the body and the mind, the central nervous system, so the sympathetic, the parasympathetic. So that's where you get the fight, flight, and freeze response. You're working with all of those things to deal with some of the physical traumas. And the beautiful thing about doing somatic type therapy is a person doesn't need to remember the traumatic event itself, and they don't need to go back into it. They don't need to talk about it, because we're not talking about the event. We're talking about, where is it still sitting in your body? Because it remains in the body.
body memories? Yeah.
Yeah, that body memory, the muscle memory is still there. So we work with that location or that spot where it is. And I also work with, moving that energy in their body. And it can be just through an exercise that'll take them through, might be a meditation, might be a visualization, or I might take them through something physically. And the physical exercises I take people through are really good for releasing a lot of the physical energy, releasing a lot of emotion and shifting the emotion. And I really have fun talking about this one to other Christians, because as soon as I say the word energy, they start thinking all this new age stuff.
Right.
And it's just, no, it's just a word I use. So you can call it emotions. You can call it seized up muscles. You can call it whatever you want.
Right.
Rose is still a rose by any other name.
Right.
So I'll show them physical exercises that they can move those emotions or move that energy, and it gets, things out and shifts things. So that is a big thing that I like to use in my practice, whether it's one-on-one or usually we do in groups. And then when we're doing in groups, like I have monthly memberships, so people can pick and choose. It's like, well, Do I want to go for the one-on-one therapy, or do I want to do a monthly membership, which is much more affordable for many people. And then they have the advantage of the interaction with other people, the community, and I'm actually able to implement more things in one class than I would with a person one-on-one.
Right.
Because I can, talk about a skill, a technique, a tool, whatever it is to bring to the table. And we can go through a practice. So I can touch on more points. And then there's the advantage of the community connection. And then, if they still need to go deeper in an area, then they can still see me on a one-on-one basis where we can hit something more specific, more
Right.
targeted, and work through that. So yeah, so there's so many different ways to work with things. But because we are not like a piece of paper, we're multidimensional, we're body, we are soul, we are mind, we are spirit. I like to work with all of those things together, because it's like taking care of a tree. If there's rot on a branch or on the leaves, sure, you can cut that branch off, but unless you treat other areas of the tree and the roots, it's going to come back, or it'll still be there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and is earlier recognition and treatment that really helps as far as?
It does. And John, what really saddens me, and this is why it's so important for me to get this information out to people, to share it with them, and is why I do so many posts every day to give information to people, is it's estimated anywhere between 70 and 90% of adults that have ADHD or ADHD aren't even aware of it.
Right.
And being not aware, ignorance is not bliss, because they don't understand the challenges in their life. And a person in the spectrum tends to have a shorter lifespan by 7 years when they're not diagnosed or treated. And that's because of all of the other things that go along with it. Because of the emotional sensitivity, they can be more prone to depression. Because of that vulnerability, they can be more prone to victimization, to being unhealthy, toxic relationships, being taken advantage of. And because of that can lead to being more prone to be vulnerable or exposed to abuse, whether it be physical abuse, emotional abuse, or sexual abuse. And then, of course, those layers all affect a person's emotional state of being, especially if they're a highly sensitive person or they have RSD. So, and then also too, there's, when people think of it, they used to say ADD and ADHD, but hyperactivity can show up different ways. And in women, it is less diagnosed than it is in men, because women tend to have more of the passive, where, the daydreaming, the distractions.
Right.
The mind might be racing like crazy,
Right.
but they're not physically active.
Right.
And so they tend to be, the people in the spectrum tend to also be more risk takers. So because they're more risk takers, they're more vulnerable to physical injuries, to dental injuries. And so because of that, and the injury aspect, the emotional aspect, all of those layers, they're not treated, it can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I've seen people that were homeless, that if they only had the supports,
Right.
they wouldn't be in that situation. or people that get to that such place of desperation where they think it is more painful to live than to complete suicide. Again, that's something that's preventable. So that puts the person in the spectrum at a higher risk just because of all of these factors. So as sooner that someone can get diagnosed, it doesn't mean you have to go on meds.
Right. No.
They are great. And it's, some people have negative reactions to it. It's just a matter of finding the right ones. And if you don't want to take medication, that's okay too. There are other ways. There's still so many other ways of working with all of these different components that I work with that'll give the person that higher quality of life.
Right.
So that they don't have all that ripple effect.
Right.
It drastically minimizes it. So they do have a higher quality of life and higher quality of living, and don't end up becoming a person at that end that has the shorter lifespan because of the risks, because of the impulsivity, because of the vulnerability, because of.
Right. Right.
So even just having the diagnosis, the sooner the better. Then sometimes just knowing, oh, that makes so much sense. And I was diagnosed with ADHD. I started to clue in my early 40s when I started running my business. But wait a minute, I really need this focus. And so I looked further into it. And that's when I realized, oh, well, that explains so much. But then I didn't realize all of the layers that came with ADHD until I started studying it further, until I went to school and realized, okay, so a person with ADHD can also have dyslexia. They could have dyscalculia. They could have dyscriptia. Is that the description? Challenges with writing.
Oh, okay, got you. Okay.
Yeah, challenges with writing. And of course, dyslexia is challenges with reading. Dyscalculia is challenges with numbers,
Okay.
with math. So, with that, or with the physical stimulation. So being a highly sensitive person, or they might not realize then, or emotion, the sensitivity with the the words getting muddled up. Yeah, there's reality.
Wow.
The brain blockages, but there's so many layers that a person can have that comes with it. And just understanding the layers sometimes just is like, okay, that makes sense. Now I know what I can work with.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the sometimes with people, they tend to go into fight, flight, and freeze mode if there's any kind of what they feel like is a confrontation. Yeah, that's the executive functioning isn't quite there the way. Just that understanding, then that helps them to know, okay, that explains A, B, and C. And sometimes just understanding and realizing, like, okay, there's an answer. That can be enough for people. And then it's okay, what tools can I find to work with this to help me in that area?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. It's something that I don't know. It wasn't around. None of this. Well, I mean, it was around, but you didn't hear.
Yeah.
About. Yeah.
We weren't diagnosed.
No, not at all. And it's very, very interesting. I don't want to say I probably have ADHD. I don't know, but a lot of that stuff.
You know what? I think
fits.
a lot of us have it to a degree.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, and one thing, it does tend to be hereditary. So when I've heard a lot of people say, I took my son or my daughter to get assessed, And as the doctor's asking these questions or the therapist is asking all these questions, I'm thinking, I'm doing the checklist in my mind and thinking,
Right.
oh my goodness, I have ADHD.
Right.
It usually comes from somewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's like I can look at my parents, and although I didn't know my dad a lot, we thought he was bipolar, and it turned out actually we after he died, we did the autopsy and stuff. Well, we didn't, but the coroner did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
Not a mess I want to get into. We discovered he had schizophrenia, and
Oh, wow.
my mom, just through stories that she had shared, my aunts had shared, my grandmother had shared, I realized, and my mom was a tiny woman. I always called her pocket-sized.
Yeah.
And, I realized, okay, she was a preemie, which was a chain reaction there. So I had the genes from both sides of the family that made me susceptible to having ADHD. And then I had my son, and he's, ADHD.
Oh, wow.
And,
Yeah.
when I was still thinking of having kids, I thought, do I want to? I actually went for genetic counseling because I thought, I don't want to pass this on to more children.
Right.
And for them to go through the struggles. So, yeah. And that was something that I didn't choose. I wanted to have more kids.
Right.
And looking back at it now, okay, everything happens for a reason.
Right.
So I'm blessed. I'm blessed with how I am. I'm a mother to many.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there is often that genetic factor, the inherited factor.
Well, that's really interesting. So, yeah, well, thank you. It's been really great interviewing you. I think we've gone like over an hour now.
Well, you can probably break this up into segments.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it,
Pleasure.
Elizabeth. Thank you so much. It was very educational. Now I gotta figure out where I'm at in this thing. And
Yeah. Well, I do like to share my PDF, and I don't, I think I
yeah,
sent
now
one
how
to
can
you.
people reach out to you or anything?
Yeah, they can reach out to me several ways. They can email me at my company is Agape Transition. So Agape is the unconditional love of God.
Right.
Through my website, agapetransitions.com, spelled AGAPE, and then transitions.com. They can email me at agapetcc1@gmail.com. They can find me on Instagram under Agape Transitions, or they can find me on Facebook under Elizabeth Kizr with Kizr Gold. So they can find me that way as well.
Okay.
And I do our group sessions, our monthly memberships. I do those online through Zoom. So and I also have my own Facebook communities as well.
Oh, wow. It was very nice talking to you, Elizabeth. I really
Thank you,
enjoyed
John.
it. Yeah, it was very educational. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully this can benefit many people.
Yeah, I will, definitely. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.